The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was hungry. The tempter approached and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become loaves of bread." He said in reply, "It is written, one does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes forth from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and made him stand on the parapet of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and with their hands they will support you, lest you dash your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him again, "It is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test." Then the devil took him up to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their magnificence. And he said to him, "All these I shall give to you, if you will prostrate yourself and worship me." At this, Jesus said to him, "Get away, Satan. It is written, the Lord your God shall you worship, and him alone shall you serve." Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. The Gospel of the Lord. So before Jesus began his public ministry, he went out for 40 days and 40 nights and fasted in the desert. No food, no nothing. So you can imagine how hungry he was. And when the devil said, "If you are the Son of God," so he's questioning Jesus' identity on the first two temptations. If you are the Son of God, prove it to me. Turn these stones into bread. Most of us would do that if we had the ability to do that. Jesus says no. Throw yourself down. Prove to me that you're the Son of God. Throw yourself down. God will send angels to protect you. He doesn't. Then he says, "I will give you all this in the world. You can have everything, power and authority in this world." But Jesus sees the bigger picture. Jesus worships God alone. So he's not interested in power and authority. And we have to remember to look at the big picture too. In the story of Genesis, Adam and Eve, in their temptation, they failed miserably because they wanted to be God. So they didn't look at the big picture. That's where they faulted, because they wanted to be a God. They wanted all that wisdom. They became aware of themselves, and they became aware that they sinned. They were looking at the immediate, what's right around me. And the first temptation that came along, they fell for. We can be God. So we have to look at ourselves and say, when are we trying to be God? And we do it a lot. We do it a lot every time we try to win an argument. When we try to convince other people about certain things that we believe to be true. But there's so many things that it's hard to actually know the whole truth. And so I'm going to give you an example. And we're going to talk about immigration. Now, in our English-speaking community, it's kind of a touchy subject. In our 12:30 Mass, it's touchy for a total different reason. But I'm going to give you a series of statements that when we argue, we tend to present our arguments as it's all truth. But in these statements that I'm going to give you about immigration, there's going to be some facts, there's going to be some myths, there's going to be some opinions, and there will be some falsehoods. So just listen to the whole argument. So, did you know that there is basically zero immigration right now and for the last couple years into the United States? It's a net zero. Did you know that? Did you know why the wall was built? Well, first of all, did you know that there actually is a wall between Mexico and the United States? And do you know why it was built? Did you know it was built to keep out drugs, not people? Did you know that a couple years ago, when the thousands of Central Americans came into this country, that they did not cross illegally? That they actually came to our border agents, women and children, and sought asylum? And did you know that now we have built detention centers along the border for those seeking asylum? Do you know what it's like to travel from Central America up to the United States? That's where the majority in the last 2 years have come from. Did you know that there is a wall between Guatemala and Mexico? I've seen pictures. Did you know that they get on trains because they're afraid for their life because of the gang problems in the cities of San Salvador? And on these trains, they travel for 3 or 4 days, and they can't fall asleep. Otherwise, they will fall off that train and be killed. And did you know that if they don't take that train, or they take part of that train and they come in through coyotes, that they risk all kinds of criminal actions against them, especially young women? Drug cartels in Mexico? Do you know that our people here 2 weeks ago were so afraid to come to Mass that we only had about 100 people at our 12:30 Mass, when we usually have double what we have right now, because of threats that ICE was going to enter churches in Kansas City? Did you know that there are sanctuary cities all the way across the United States? Did you know that Cardinal Cupich in Chicago has told every Catholic church and pastor in Chicago not to allow the police or even cooperate with the police if they come searching for immigrants? But did you also know that there's no such thing as sanctuary? That with a warrant, they can enter a church. And we can't stop them. Otherwise, we are breaking the law. Did you know that we now have Hispanic parents coming to us to help them with powers of attorney so that they can designate who's going to take care of their children should they get deported? Did you know for that over 5 years since I've been here, well, it's less than 5, there's a falsehood. 4 years, we have developed a crisis packet for all immigrants so that they're prepared. Did you know that this is not a new issue? This is something that we've been working on for quite a while. Do you know what the Catholic Church teaches on it? Did you know that I've never heard a bishop, a cardinal, or a pope ever say that we should not welcome the stranger. Okay, so what's true? And what's false? And what's opinion? First of all, there is no wall between Guatemala and Mexico. But I did see pictures of it. But the pictures were a fantastically beautiful wall fence. One picture was actually a fence around the Palestinians in Palestine and Israel, not Mexico and Guatemala. Another one was part of our border wall in Arizona, not between Mexico and Guatemala. That was forwarded through Facebook. And it seemed plausible if you don't do any research on it. So that is an outright lie to try to influence people's thoughts. Is there really a wall between Mexico and the United States? Yes and no. There's many miles of wall, fences, but not the whole entire border. And Pope Francis actually celebrated Mass on the Mexico side of the wall in El Paso, and the Catholics were on the U.S. side celebrating Mass with Pope Francis. So there is wall. And it really was built to keep out drug trafficking at the beginning. It is true that our Hispanic communities are preparing with powers of attorney. It is true that we do have kids here that are already living with other parents because both their parents are in Mexico and can't get back, and they haven't been able to get back for 4 years. It is true that to travel from Central America here is very dangerous. They do travel on trains. And I have been to a museum in San Salvador. It's a memorial museum for all those who have died en route. And they give the stories of what happened as far as they know. And there's lots of rosaries and teddy bears and water bottles that were left and brought back to this museum. Now, what are the opinions? The opinions are things that I don't know verifiably to be true. I do know that there is really no such thing as sanctuary as how we think about it. But I also know that I've never ever heard of immigration coming into churches. Doesn't mean they haven't, or they won't. Doesn't mean that they haven't, I don't know. So that's opinion. So we have to be careful with our opinions, because when we have opinions based on some facts, some lies, other opinions that are trying to influence us what to believe and how to believe, and then we go around spewing our opinions like it's gospel, that's when we need to be careful. So we have to do a little bit of research. We have to be willing to say, am I wrong? Do I have all the facts? Is it possible that my opinion is not correct? I do that all the time. I did that yesterday when I was thinking, I'm going to give this homily. Do you really want to give this homily? Could I be wrong? But a lot of times we don't want to admit that we could possibly be wrong, and that's our temptation. That's us being Adam and Eve going for that tree and going for that fruit. That would be like Jesus saying, yes, devil, I will take your offer. So we have to be careful about how we opine. And we have to pray. We have to look into these issues. We have to look into how the church feels and teaches on these issues. Not just immigration, but any issue. And it's not a new issue because of President Trump. You know, liberals are trying to blame this all on Trump. It's been going on for a long time. It was going on during Obama's administration also. It's not a new issue. And our opinions need to grow and change. That's how we stay open to God. By not falling into the temptations of this world, but seeing the big picture. We have to look at what Pope Francis says, what Pope Benedict says, what Pope John Paul II said. We have to look at what our bishops say. What does our church teaching teach us? And what I always do is I ask in my prayers, and I think about nothing that was in the scripture today, but when Jesus says to us, when it's our time to meet him, when he says to me, "Where were you, Jeff, when I was naked, when I was hungry, when I was in prison, when I was a stranger?" To wrap up the homily, be careful about what you're trying to convince other people of. Think with compassion, with empathy, with love, and look at the big picture. Try to see like God sees. Don't be God. Be humble. Be a child of God. And always be open to his Spirit.